Monday, July 1st on Black and Gold Breakdown. Welcome in, everybody. Jared Bailey. Joined by Derrick Bell of Steelers Now. Always good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Doing all right, man. It's a little cooler today, so I spent most of my morning outside, so that was nice. Got a little exercise in, a little sunlight, so it's good, man. I'm ready to jump on here and talk some ball.
In exactly 1 month's time, a football game will be played. It's pretty exciting, man. Are you gonna gamble on the Hall of Fame game like I do? Complete degenerate.
I I don't know. We'll see. That is around the time I'm hoping to get up to Latrobe for training camp, and it's also a month from today is also my birthday, so
Oh hell
it'll be
yeah.
nice. Hopefully, be in Pittsburgh. Hopefully, got some live football, even if it's just preseason. I'm just really ready to get stuff going. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm on obviously this is a Steelers show. I'm wearing a Dan Marino shirt. Didn't really, change. So, oh well. He went to Pitt. That's close enough.
That's
So yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, Twitter, wherever you're watching, first of all, subscribe to the channel. That would be lovely. We're closing in on 1,200. Good stuff all around. So today, we talked about this a little bit for the past week or so. Me and DB will be doing an all-time draft because it's July 1st and not a lot going on right now. So this is how you fill time with content this time of the year. So 10 picks a piece, and then afterwards we'll do one UDFA of okay, this guy wasn't very good, but I liked him, so he's going to be on the team. What we'll do to determine the first pick, I have a picture of a coin. I don't have a physical coin. I have a picture of a coin, and if you can tell me if it's heads or tails, you will go first. If you guess it wrong, I will go first. All right. So, and I will show you for proof too. So heads or tails.
all right. So tails never fails, man.
It did this time because it's heads.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. So I'll start off with my first pick, and it's not going to be hard. I'm just going to take Ben and go on to the second round. Favorite player of all time, best quarterback in franchise history. Not a difficult pick.
Pretty easy selection there. That's probably who I would have taken. I did kind of like my own mini big board for this, just so I could
I
keep
love
my
it. I
thoughts
love
straight. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, starting the draft with best quarterback of all time, I think it's in franchise history, I think that's a pretty easy pick. It was really between two guys for me. If I would have got the first pick, it was going to be between Ben and me and Joe Green, so that's who I'm going to take. Kind of similar conversation to Ben, just having, in my opinion, probably most win Steelers of all time, arguably the greatest Steelers defender of all time. I just think that when I think of Joe Green too, I tried to keep in mind, the context of I wanted guys that could play in pretty much any era, and Joe Green kind of fits that bill for me. I just think that the accolades really speak for themselves. 4-time All-Pro, 4-time Super Bowl champ, Hall of Famer. An absolute monster. I would love to see what he could do in an era that threw the ball more, but one of the most physically imposing defenders of his era. So I'm definitely gonna take him.
Yeah, I mean, never a bad pick when you take Joe. I'm gonna take probably just my second favorite Steeler of all time here. I'll also go defense. I'll take Troy Polamalu. That'll be my second pick. I think going looking back of the jerseys that I had when I was a kid, that was the most excited I was to get one. I was like, hell yeah, because I was a chubby kid, and Troy Polamalu was the complete antithesis of what I was and what I wanted to be. So yeah, definitely one of my favorite players ever. Just one of the most unique players ever in terms of just the things that he could do all over the field. Love Troy. And any chance that you can just go back, throw on a nice little quick highlight tape of Troy Polamalu doing out of worldly stuff. It's always fun. Shout out to the YouTube chat, by the way, tuning into us right now. How you doing, guys? So yeah, Ben and Troy. I'm content with my first two picks.
Yeah. Those I was kind of putting together, kind of how I wanted to do it as far as teetering between back and forth offense, defense. Me being a cornerback guy, I'm going to take Mel Blount and just kind of stick with the 70s era Steelers to start the draft for me. Gonna build that side of the ball. But I mean, I think Mel Blount, we think of all these guys that we kind of consider freaks in today's era with the height, the weight, the speed, just the physicality. I mean, you look back at like Mel Blount and the way that he literally changed the game and changed the rules for how defenders are allowed to play. I'm definitely comfortable adding a guy like him to the secondary and kind of building around my defense. That's where I'm going to go with my second pick.
Yeah, they changed the rules, and I think he still had like 3 more Pro Bowl selections after the fact. So yeah, incredible, just specimen, incredible, really pioneer for the game, because arguably the pass game wouldn't be what it is today if not for him just being a menace. So
And a
cannot
really
argue.
cool dude. I will also say this, a really cool dude. I met him a couple years ago at training camp, and I met him as a kid when like at a signing type of thing. But
Mhm.
really easy to talk to, really easygoing, and definitely a good dude in addition to that. So,
What
but yeah.
was? Did you ever have like a like very random player like autograph memorabilia thing? Because I had one like that I had for a while, and it was the most random player that you could think of. So it was a autographed Super Bowl 40 helmet, right? And it was signed by Veron Haynes. I had that growing
Okay.
up. Did you have anything like that? That was, I was like, okay, yeah, we know who he is as Steelers fans, but like anybody else would be like, who the hell is who's that?
Well, I would tell you guys that if y'all could see my basement, I've been a bedroom down in my basement right now. But if y'all could see my actual basement, it's got memorabilia pretty much hanging up everywhere. I mean, I've got jerseys signed by just like the most random players of all time. I would say like the coolest thing for me probably was when I was in my, I think, early 20s. It was around like 21 or so. I don't remember, but I was at Steelers training camp and I got to meet Ike Taylor. That was probably like that was like the dream come true for me because he was my favorite player growing up, and like he like took
Really?
pictures with me. Yeah, he took pictures with me. He gave me he like signed a bunch of stuff for me. But I would say like the most random is probably it's funny because he's become like really mainstream recently. Is Brian McFadden.
Oh,
I
okay.
got when I was a kid, I was sitting in the front row of the Steelers Bengals playoff game, actually, 2005. They went on to win the Super Bowl, but he came over like after the game and like gave me his gloves. I still have them. They're somewhere in my basement. I think they're in that drawer, like right next to me. So, but yeah, probably some stuff like that. But I got a bunch of like random memorabilia stuff still, even though I don't really collect a ton anymore.
Ike Taylor, the coolest dude ever, friend of this very program, Ike Taylor. I love anytime he comes on. He was at mini camp for a day, and I talked to him for a minute, and he's like got his own cigar business now and everything. So yeah, Ike's the best, man. That's awesome. So round 3. All right, so I got Ben and Troy. I don't know, like we've definitely gotten 2 different directions where you're going old school. I'm going like, hey, I like these dudes are great, and I like them growing up. So do I stick with that? There's a lot of receivers, so like I might just wait. Don't have a running back. Don't have. I'll take another defensive player. I'll take Rod Woodson.
Okay.
I think Rod, like, he's part of that like era that like had great defenses, but kind of get glossed over because they didn't win anything. They got to a Super Bowl and everything, but fell short. But Rod's awesome. Safety, cornerback, return specialist. I think still holds the record for most interceptions returned for a touchdown. Like, dude is a menace. Great mustache. So overall, big Woodson guy. Also,
freaky athlete. Freaky
absolutely,
athlete.
man. Absolutely. Really good, like post NFL career too, as an analyst for a while. So yeah, he's awesome. I love Rod Woodson.
Yeah, I would definitely, not have any qualms about that pick. Rod, like what he could do with the ball in his hands too, like he was so dangerous, not just as a return man, but you mentioned like when he gets the ball in his hands, after he gets a pick or anything like that. I mean, I still remember like watching the old school DVDs that my dad had of like when Woodson like tore his ACL or whatever, and they didn't put him on injury reserve so he could come back and play in the Super Bowl. I mean, like that's the type of we think about Adrian Peterson's miraculous like recovery. He came back from the ACL in like 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
Like Woodson was doing some crazy stuff too, and that's before like really modern technology. So
Yeah.
yeah, total freak show, excellent cover corner. He turned into a good safety later in his career too. So my third pick, I'm going to stick with the defensive side of the ball. I guess that's just the route that I'm going. But I'm going to go with TJ. I'm going to take TJ Watt.
This is a good pick.
Steelers all-time leading sack artist right now. You just look at the accolades, like defensive player of the year. I mean, he pretty much checks every box in terms of like what you're looking for in terms of like high end accolades. 6-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All Pro. He's gonna probably, if I had to guess, like barring something unforeseen, he's able to stay healthy over the next couple of years. He'll probably be a member of the 2020 all-time team when it's all said and
Oh
done.
yeah, absolutely.
The Steelers have had a ton of like crazy good outside linebackers, man. Like, I mean, I grew up watching, Jason Gilden, Joey Porter, and then like a little bit later, James Harrison, Lamar Woodley. I think TJ, based on like the level that he's taken his game over the last couple of years, man, like it's hard to argue that, that he's not, at the very top of that list. So I'm gonna go with TJ and feel pretty good about, my start with this trio of defensive players.
Yeah, no qualms there. And I like the fact that you took him that early because he is that good. Yeah, I think he is, outside of Joe Green, the best pass rusher, arguably in the history of the team. So I love TJ, man. I really hope that, especially this year, we talked about it in the lobby before the show started, how excited we were for this year. Bro's been with the team since 2017. They haven't won a playoff game with him. And so it does. And, there's plenty of circumstances and reasons why. Anytime that they have gotten in, it's been okay. Have fun going to Arrowhead and playing Kansas City,
right?
And just getting destroyed because your defense is too slow to keep up with all these guys. But this year, like if they get a playoff win, that's a giant. Okay, I can be content with that. Build for the future, but at least get one with him because he's too good to at least not taste playoff success.
Sure.
So love TJ. Okay, so there's a few like all-time, and there's a lot of all-time guys left, but like a few notable ones that are left. And I feel like, I've got my secondary kind of played out with Troy and Rod Woodson. So I'll take Jack Lambert with my fourth. I don't think that bars too much of an explanation. Can you imagine what show is it? I think it was one of the NFL Network top 10 shows, and they were talking about Jack Lambert. And they're like, can you imagine like dating a girl in high school and it's Jack Lambert's daughter. And you're like, mom, you're like, oh shit. So scary.
Yeah, no, it's still so funny. Like I always see that clip like float around on social media. I feel like every summer of him and the Cowboys like kicker or whatever, just like knocking him over. Yeah, I mean the game was completely different back then, but you look at like the way Lambert played, just the physicality. I feel like that physicality's kind of become almost like synonymous, with the Steelers franchise, particularly with the Steelers defense. You talk about, even though, 40 years has passed or whatever, like, I feel like there's still that kind of standard to uphold that, brand of ball on that side of the ball. So I definitely don't have any qualms with that. I think like between him and Jack Ham, I feel like those guys both kind of transcended and really set the tone for the linebacker position for, decades to come.
Yeah.
My next pick, I am actually going to go offense. And I'm a little bit torn because I think that this person's legacy is a little bit difficult to discuss with everything that's kind of gone on. But if we're just talking football, it's hard for me not to take Antonio Brown.
I don't blame you.
I feel like it was really incredible, the 6-year stretch that him and Ben had together. It was something I just don't think see like too often. I mean, even in a passing league right now, I feel like the numbers that they were able to accumulate and how good those two were. And the thing for me that kind of set that duo apart is, you knew exactly what was coming and teams still couldn't stop it. I mean, there was a very strong foundation there that teams knew like the game plan coming in was, regardless if you put one guy, two guys on AB, he was still going to be able to get his. One of the best route runners of his era, honestly, an extremely underrated contested catch player of his era. Even though he was really small.
The playoff game against Jacksonville, he has 2 touchdown catches where AJ Bouye is hanging all over him. Like he's amazing at doing that stuff now.
Yeah, I mean, just the way he would be able to create space for himself, not just as a route runner, but underrated from a physicality standpoint. So strong and dense for like his frame. Extremely like, good after the catch, especially early in his career. And then like as he got even a little bit older in his last year or two with the Steelers, being able to kind of understand like even more of some of the subtleties of the position. Just an absolutely amazing player to watch in his prime. Now I know like, the off the field stuff is, concerning, but You know, as far as like what's happened since he left Pittsburgh or since, you know, that ugly kind of dismissal, I guess
Yeah.
it was what, 2018 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of frustrating, but I still feel like, you know, if you're building a team from scratch, it's hard to ignore that he was the most like talented, um, you know, receiver in franchise history.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, the best receiver in franchise history. And like you said, we can talk about the off-field stuff and what happened after Pittsburgh and what led to him leaving Pittsburgh. That's a whole different conversation. But
Right.
the most fun, just every week for a 6-year stretch, knowing okay, Ben and AB are going to put on a show, and looking back on it now, like especially the past couple seasons, like being so spoiled as fans, knowing okay, you got Ben, AB, you got a shot. The past couple years was like, if a team scores more than 20, they're boned. So like, that wasn't a worry for a long time.
And I think too, like it just really reinforces like some of the stuff that, I used to say all the time, like back on Twitter. It's like, y'all better appreciate like this era. Like people get so frustrated and so like singularly focused on like Super Bowl or bust kind of mentality. And, they got close. They got to the AFC Championship game in 2016. They had some unfortunate injuries. Like you think of 2015, like who knows how that Denver game, plays out if AB's healthy and Ben's healthy. And I mean, they beat that team early in the season. So, who knows? Like, they look at how many playoff games that they had, like just in that 5-year stretch or whatever, where one of Ben, AB, or Le'Veon weren't healthy, or if they were out there on the field, they weren't 100%. And like that's the thing. Like there's so much stuff that goes into sports. It's just relegated to the luck factor and how healthy you are when you get to the playoffs. And it's unfortunate that they didn't get it done with that trio, but I still feel like, from a memory standpoint, I mean, that team, that era of Steelers football, even though they didn't win a Super Bowl, was extremely fun to watch, and definitely something that I'll look back on fondly, even though like some of the stuff that's happened since then that's kind of, left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth, which I understand too. But like I said, it was a cool time to be a Steelers fan.
It was very, very fun. That brings us to the 5th round. I think we're going to go back to offense. AB would have been my pick if you didn't take him. And like, I could go with like one of the all-time receivers and whatnot, but I think I'm just gonna take Le'Veon.
Okay.
With my pick, I think that like you can look at guys like Franco or Jerome, like they have the numbers and whatnot, but I think in terms of just like overall like peak performance, I think Le'Veon clears both of them. When he was a Steeler, like every week you just hear, like I remember like Ian Eagle and Dan Fouts every like, oh, the patience of Le'Veon Bell. Like, dude, that was all you heard for 17 weeks for like 4 years. And it was really fun. So one of like my favorite players, especially of that era where, as you transition to more of a passing league, he was more than just a running back. And obviously that was a big reason why he held out for more money, is because he valued himself as more than just a running back. So I love Le'Veon. He's one of my favorite players to watch in terms of just, ushering in this new era of football. In terms of, you look at guys now like Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler for a little bit, like you got to be able to run and, be some sort of a threat as a pass catcher. And I think he was kind of really one of the pioneers of it for this era. So love Le'Veon Bell. I'll take him as my running back.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Le'Veon, man, like you mentioned the patience, but just the way that he moved and kind of the way that he was able to move after he reconstructed his body after that rookie year.
He lost a
just
lot
really,
of weight.
really special, man. For a bigger back to have feet like that, to have the ability to stop and start like he could, and also like still finish with physicality. I mean, it was definitely like what you look for, like a modern day running back. Another person, maybe not as sour of a taste, I feel like, in Steelers fans' mouth, but another person whose departure was kind of ugly. But, it just is what it is, man. The NFL is a business. And, it's a shame that, like I said, that era of Steelers football get. But there was a lot of good memories, man, just watching that offense hum, especially when everybody was healthy, man. It was borderline unstoppable. So my next pick, I'm going to stick with the opposite side of the ball. I'm actually going to take Alan Faneca. I thought about like
now. Let's go.
Yeah, I thought about like positional value and kind of how I was going to go with this. full disclosure, I probably would have taken Bradshaw earlier than this just because I'm a quarterback guy. But you've already taken Ben, so I know you're not going to take him. So I'm not really
Yeah,
worried about not getting
correct.
him.
Yeah.
So I'll probably just wait. But perks of the way the draft or whatever. But
Sure.
I'm going to take Faneca, man, just because like growing up again, like watching him dominate every single Sunday, even as somebody who didn't really like fully appreciate offensive line play, like, you know, when I was a kid, you could still tell how physically dominant he was. And I still think of, you know, some of that, like that key block, you know, pulling around for Willie Parker in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
You just look at the accolades. 9-time Pro Bowler, 6-time first team All Pro, Hall of Famer. Probably should have been a first ballot guy, in my opinion, just because he was Hall of Fame. All team for the 2000s, but he was somebody that I would have definitely wanted on my team. And I feel like positional value aside, having a guard like that who was a dominant puller, good in space, could also pass protect. You know, his time with the Steelers, even though he did play with the Jets like late in his career, his time with the Steelers was about as impressive as any offensive lineman probably in the history of the franchise. So I'm going to take Faneca.
Random thought that I have every time I think of Alan Faneca, there was a time in like the late 2000s to like early 2010s where like a bunch of former Steelers would go to the Jets. Like Faneca did for a minute, Willie Colon did for a minute, Kimo von Oelhoff did for a minute. Who did?
Santonio
did. Yep. So like there was just a horde of them that played for the Jets at some point in their careers, and that always comes to mind. Faneca's great, dude, and he's one of those offensive linemen. Like you look at him now, he's incredibly just trimmed down, looks fantastic. It's big Alan Faneca guy. I don't know. Is he the best guard in franchise history?
I think so. I mean, I think he has I mean, I know the centers tend to get a lot more national attention. You know, people always talk about the lineage of centers that the Steelers franchises have, but I think Faneca has as good of a claim to the best offensive lineman in Steelers history as anybody. So
I would agree.
Heck of a player.
All right. So I still don't have a receiver. There's one that like I want to take. I'm not going to take him in the 6th round though, because I can get better players. I am going to take him though before the draft is over. And if you take him, I'll be a little sad.
Okay.
I'm going to take. Oh, damn it! That really taking a lineman in the 5th really threw me for a loop because now I'm thinking maybe I should take a lineman. I will take. I don't have a pass rusher yet. I'm just noticing that. So I'll take James Harrison. I think that I should get myself a pass rusher.
If Harrison lasted much longer, I was thinking about pairing him with TJ just for fun.
No. James Harrison, man, like I don't know, growing up and just seeing him dominate, like the first like memory I had was really his breakout game against Baltimore on Monday night. I think it was 2007, where he just destroyed Baltimore for 3 hours. It was great. And then in 2008, when they played in New England, I think he stripped Castle on consecutive drives. They destroyed the Patriots that game. He won Defensive Player of the Year that year. Like, he's awesome. And then even like in his second run with the team as like a vet, obviously wasn't the same guy that he used to be, but being able to like say that, okay, TJ Watt and James Harrison are on the same team, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Big James Harrison guy. I want to say, in that playoff game against Kansas City in like 2015, he like torched, was it Eric Fisher? That was the left tackle. And
he still had a little juice, man.
Yeah. So it was cool to see like, the old dog still having some tricks up his sleeve and being able to contribute to, a team like that. So I love James Harrison, man. Especially like when he started wearing the dark visor, he just looked intimidating as hell. Yeah. So big time guy.
Yeah, the story of how like Harrison's career like jump started, and then the underdog mentality. I feel like that really never left him. I mean, just a weird build for an outside linebacker too, like for an edge rusher. Like his short stature really helped him, gain that kind of natural leverage, and he was consistently able to. He had the bull, he had the rip, and really like he only had like 2 real moves, but those 2 moves were pretty dominant. It didn't matter what you did. But yeah, a heck of a player, man. Like didn't have like the longest career in terms of like prime, but just because he got started a little bit later. But man, like you said, there was definitely a stretch of time where you could make an argument that he was, the best player, the best defender in the league. So
That
definitely a heck of a
that
player.
stretch from like 2010 to like 2011 was a really good stretch. Really good stretch.
Yeah. Um, man, I kind of want to stay with the offensive side of the ball because I feel like I took 3 straight defenders. Let's see. Um, I'm gonna go back to back with receiver. I'm gonna take Hines Ward.
See, like I totally get that pick. I like Hines and everything. It's just, I wasn't feeling it. But I totally
Yeah,
get why you're picking him there. Yeah. Hines is good.
yeah. I'm gonna take Hines, mainly just put him in the slot because I kind of have my vision for what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna
Oh,
put AB at X. I'm gonna put Hines in the slot, and then I'm eventually gonna take quarterback, and I'll probably finish it off maybe with one more offensive player. But yeah, I mean Hines, I think it's tough to kind of place him among, a franchise that has so many like all-time greats because, he didn't have like the highest peak of a lot of the players that, are going to be drafted in this exercise, and maybe some
yeah.
of the players that even won't be drafted in this exercise. But I think like what Hines was able to do over the course of his career, what he did as a blocker, like the effort, also, it gives me another like yards after catch kind of guy, guys that can move the chains, work the middle of the field. Yeah, I'm comfortable with Hines, especially as like my number 2 wide receiver. That's gonna I feel like allow me to kind of take my mismatches on defense. So I'm gonna take Hines.
Yeah, I mean, he was a guy in like an era of, the Chad Johnsons and the Steve Smiths and the Marvin Harrisons, Randy Mosses. Like, he was still a guy that, would put up, 90, 100 catches a year, get to the Pro Bowl, often enough, like was still very, very good. But I think that, not being, a super fast guy, not being a loud guy, I think that kind of underrated him in a few certain
Sure.
aspects. He was there forever, though. I mean, 98 to 2012, like he was there forever. Like,
Yeah.
very long tenure. So
That's the other thing too, like with Hines, a lot that I feel like some of the like it's kind of a catch-22 because he did play for a while, so like he did accumulate a good amount of stats, but
yeah,
and kind of it's a double-edged sword, right? Because I don't think that he was ever like one of the 3 or 4 best receivers in the league,
I
because he
agree.
was playing in that era where he was with, T.O. and Randy Moss and like those type of guys. So it's kind of hard to put him in that category. But it's also fair to say that like he wasn't playing with some of these superstar quarterbacks. Like, you know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like the Steelers had some quarterback issues earlier in his career. I mean, like he had a great season with Tommy Maddox back there at quarterback in 2003.
He had 93
He
catches
was,
that year.
yeah, I mean, he was playing with, Cordell. For as good as he wasn't really like an overly adept passer.
Right.
And then I feel like, maybe the narrative's a little bit different if, he would have played with Ben a little bit early in his career, or if they could have had a longer stretch together. But those teams were really run heavy too, like with Jerome, like in the early 2000s, they wanted to run the ball. So definitely an interesting player. But yeah, I just think from a standpoint of like how I would want to play on offense with multiple really good wide receivers, I'm pretty comfortable with having that as my 1-2 punch.
I totally get it. It's a solid pick. I'm gonna say right now, I'm not gonna take any of the '70s receivers. So I might be playing my hand a little bit there, but like I'll be perfectly honest with you. Not to say that Swan or Stallworth weren't great. Obviously, they're both in the Hall of Fame for a reason, but like I wasn't alive to appreciate that. And
Sure.
it's there's guys that I would rather have on my team, and I might even cost myself a few points here, but I don't care. I want them, and at the fear that for some reason you might take him, whether it be is like that whole UDFA thing or not. I'm very much reaching here, but he's legitimately one of my 3 favorite Steelers of all time. So I'm going to take Mike Wallace. I love
Oh,
Mike.
it's my dog. It's my dog.
Mike Wallace was my shit as a kid, man. I was devastated when he signed with Miami. I felt like a part of me had died, and from '09 to was it 2013, 2014, legitimately my favorite player. So fast, so fun to watch with the ball in his hands. You knew that any given play could end up being a long touchdown because he was in. And like legitimately, like very briefly, one of the 10 to 15 most dangerous players in the league, just because having been at quarterback obviously helped. And he was able to be that that speed demon, that over the top guy who consistently made plays. So again, I understand that Swan, Stalwart, there's plenty of other guys who probably could have taken there, but in terms of like my personal fandom and what I grew to appreciate, Mike Wallace legitimately one of my like 3 to 5 favorite Steelers ever, and I did not want to get through this without taking him. So Mike Wallace, my receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't have taken him here, but Mike is like, man, he was so cool. Like, it's so funny because back in the day, like when I first made my Twitter, right? So this was, I think I first made my Twitter in like 2010, 2011. So this was like when Mike was he was the number one wide receiver for the Steelers. I actually made my handle Derrick the Kid because of Mike
His is
Wallace.
the Kid, yeah.
So I had my handle to match his because like I really love watching him play, man. Like you said, like the fireworks that him and Ben created was really fun. I still remember that touchdown. I remember exactly where I was at. The touchdown he caught against the Cardinals, 95 yards.
Yeah.
The corner's literally playing like 12 yards off, and he still loses the foot race by like 5 yards. I mean, that's how fast he was. I mean, one of the fastest. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I've seen everybody live, but one of the fastest human beings I've ever seen in person. Like just an incredible straight line speed guy. But yeah, Mike was really cool to watch, and it kind of sucks because I really did as he was kind of changing teams later in his career. I was kind of hoping that we may get one of those reunions just for like another year because I mean Mike could still run. You think like when he signed with Baltimore, that kind of hurt my soul a little bit.
Me
It's
too.
like, man, like I just don't like I just don't like those guys. So I didn't like seeing him there, but yeah, Mike's a cool dude, man. I used to love watching him play. So I respect the decision, even if I get that it's coming from probably an emotional standpoint.
Absolutely. And like I said, like completely appreciate the fact that, Lynn Swan, John Stallworth are both in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
For sure.
In this case, I don't care. I prefer that 1-7 on the field every Sunday used to just, it was electrifying. And I love Mike Wallace. So I'm happy that he's on my team. And when I release the graphics of these, there's going to be so many people like, why the hell did you take Mike Wallace in the 7th round? And they're like, because I wanted to. That's my dog. So I'm totally ready for the backlash of it, and I don't care.
All right. I get it. So what pick are we at right now?
We are
is this the
in
6th round?
7th round.
Oh, this is the 7th round. I'm trying to think of who I picked. I know I started out with 3 defenders.
I'll give you a rundown. So right now we've got Joe Green, Mel Blount, TJ Watt, Antonio Brown, Alan Faneca, Hines Ward.
Okay, cool. I'm trying to think here. Where do I want to go? I'll tell you what. I am gonna take. I'm gonna take Minka because I was thinking about taking Troy. Troy was like really high on my big board. Minka wasn't quite this high, but I know that I do want a safety in here, and it was really between like I wanted to come away with one of those guys, and I actually thought about maybe doubling up if I had the chance to. Minka, his story is kind of still being written, so I mean I feel like it's probably maybe a little bit premature. This is probably earlier than maybe he should go, but I also think the type of play that he's executed, I feel like throughout the time he's been a Steeler has been pretty notable. I mean, they've been one of the best players in his position since they made that trade, and I have no qualms with taking him. There's some other safeties like that I could have probably went with as far as like that are maybe more decorated. Like I thought about taking Donnie Shell, a guy who, in my opinion, I think he has like 50-something interceptions. Definitely a Hall of Fame caliber player. But I'm going to take Minka just because, honestly, man, like that 2019 season, I guess it was when Ben like tore his elbow.
Yeah,
literally one of the best seasons, like individually in franchise history that I've been alive to see. And like just because of the way that he was changing games. I mean, I think about, he had the game stealing interception against the Rams. He had that pick six against the Colts. I mean, it was like every week he was just
Yeah.
doing something to keep them in the game. And, I know last year was kind of frustrating because he didn't have the season that he wanted. But, in the 4 years or whatever that he's been in Pittsburgh, he's already accumulated two first team All Pros. I just think that, even 2 years ago, like after he got that contract, the interceptions off Burrow and like some of the things that he can do in terms of like the range, not just as a player playing in the center field, but like he's also a really rangy player against like check downs and things like that.
Yeah.
He's improved every year as a tackler, which is something that I really appreciate. I loved him coming out of Alabama. I was conflicted like when they did the trade, not because I mean, like I love the prospect, but like there was just so unknown. That was a weird time to be like a Steelers fan or like doing like Steelers coverage because, Ben had just blown out his elbow. Like we didn't really know like what that was going to be like for
Yeah.
a while. That was a scary injury. I mean, things, played out the way they did, but, it was like, all right, are we going to need a quarterback? They trade the first round pick for a safety. Minka had a decent rookie year, but nothing crazy. And there was some like weird, like coaching turmoil there between him and the coaching staff, wanted to play him out of position. But that trade has looked really good in hindsight. And yeah, I'm going to take Minka. I feel pretty good about it.
No, I mean, he and Justin Simmons, the only two safeties with 3 All-Pro selections since 2019. So, yeah, you mentioned that 2019 season, man. Like, you go back to that Colts interception, I think really exemplifies when he's at his best because I think Brissett had just gotten injured. Was it Brian Hoyer that came in to relieve him? And like Minka, like just reads his eyes. He's playing center field, jumps on the ball, and then 97 yards later, it's a touchdown. Even in his first game with the Steelers, he had a pick against the 49ers, recovered a fumble, like immediately was an X factor. So, but yeah, that entire year was great stuff. I think he'll go down as a guy similar to Jerome, where like, yeah, he'll be only known as a Steeler. Like, yeah, Jerome played with the Rams, and yeah, Minka was a Dolphin for a little bit, but he's a Steeler. I love Minka, and I think that that's a perfectly fine place to take him. 8th round, I got my receiver. So what else do I even need? I got pass rusher, I got a safety, I got a corner, got my quarterback, obviously, running back. I can just kind of go for. I mean, hell, at this point, I don't have a lineman yet. I feel like if I don't take a lineman, there's going to be like my boy JP Acosta is going to be like, you hate big man football. And then I'm going to go support. So I feel like I should probably take one. So I'll just kind of make it easy on myself and take Pounce.
Okay.
I think you look at the longevity. I mean, for a decade, he was either the best center in the NFL or the second best, third best. Like he was consistently in that conversation, one of the best centers of his day, if not the best center of his day. I'm pretty sure he's on the 2010s the Hall of Fame team. So he lived up to the hype from day one. And I think some guys you don't truly appreciate until they're gone, and having to live through Kendrick Green and Mason Cole really makes you appreciate how great Marquise Pouncey was. And while I appreciate the fact that Ben was able to play, one more year and they somehow got into the playoffs that year, I think it would have been somewhat poetic if he and Pouncey went out together, just because those they're boys and everything, and that would have been somewhat poetic. But yeah, I love Pounce. I think that in terms of you look at the great centers in history, like again, this is another thing where it's like I understand Mike Webster was great, I understand Armani Dawson was great. You can throw in Jeff Hardings there if you want to. He was an All-Pro at the Steelers for a minute, but. Yeah, growing up with Pouncey, like that was, you had an anchor in the middle that was going to hold shit down. So big 5'3", 8th round pick for me.
I feel like that's a pretty good pick. I am going to stay with the theme of offensive lineman, and I'm actually going to take Armani Dawson. So I'm going to take another Hall of Famer center. We talked about the lineage of center kind of a little bit earlier, but a guy who's from Kentucky, so I gotta rep the squad a little bit. But 7-time All-Pro, or 7-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All Pro, Hall of Fame 1990s team. Kind of like one of the few, like kind of the same thing I said with Faneca. Dawson was a little bit older when I was like a kid, but he was a starter and a first team All Pro guy on that 95 team that went to the Super Bowl. So he was a big part of like I said, I grew up kind of like watching like the team videos. I don't even know if they make these anymore. But like they used to have these like team videos. They were like NFL films related. But like he was always a big part of like they would talk about like the run game and establishing stuff with like Jerome. And it was just really cool to kind of see all those guys come together. But I mean, I think there was a 5 or 6 year stretch where he was first team All Pro at the center spot. So I'm gonna feel really good about having him and Faneca kind of along the interior of my offensive line. That's where I'm gonna roll.
Good stuff all around. Okay, so we each got a center now. You got one additional offensive lineman. I'm going to be honest with you, probably not going to take another offensive lineman. I got one. I think that's, he can be my offensive lineman for the team. 2 more. There's a couple like fan favorites that I still have in my head that I could probably take. There's a few underrated guys that again might not make, the older generations.
How about we do this? Let's do a UDFA on both sides of the ball, and neither of those guys can have made a Pro Bowl. We'll do that. That'll let you get some more like fan favorites out.
All right, good. All right, I like that. Okay, so that'll help me weed out a couple. If that's the case, I'm pretty sure this guy made it. Let me verify that this guy made a Pro Bowl real quick because I want to say he did. And if he did, then I'm probably going to take him because I think he's one of the more underrated guys of the 2000s. He did. He made 2, and he was an All-Pro once too. So you know what? I feel good about taking him. So at my inside linebacker spot, I'm going to take James Ferrier. I think
that's a good pick.
Oh, I love James Ferrier. You talk about like the Steelers in that era of Kevin Colbert, obviously, especially in like the early 2000s, not a team that was going to make big splash moves. When they brought in James Ferrier, I think that really took the defense up a notch because he was, again, a guy who was a long-term anchor in the middle of the defense, 2-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, part of all 3 teams that went to the Super Bowl from 2005 to 2010. Just really consistent. And while they had great players around him with Troy and Harrison, and even at one point with Joey Porter, like he was the consistent anchor in the middle. Big time James Ferrier guy. There's a lot of underrated pieces on that defense that don't get enough love. He's certainly one of them. So I'll have James Ferrier be playing next to Jack Lambert. Feel pretty good about that.
That's a good pick. We talked about the Jets Steelers connection a little bit earlier, but that was kind of the inverse. Like he started his career with the Jets and then came to Pittsburgh. Honestly, like he has a real claim to being maybe the best free agent signing of all time, like for the Steelers. I mean, he's definitely up there. So, I actually am gonna go inside linebacker with my next pick as well. I'm gonna take Jack Ham because I don't have an inside linebacker yet. And the reason why Ham was kind of the guy that I really wanted was because he was like honestly ahead of his time in terms of like what he could do in coverage. Like he's a guy who finished his career with 32 interceptions. I think at the time that he retired, I believe that was the all-time leader for like his era at the position. So I mean 32 interceptions, incredibly, impressive. But this dude also like he had like 25 sacks. So he was a guy that could rush a passer. He could, he was a really good athlete for his era. But I'm gonna take him. Obviously, 4-time Super Bowl champ. I think he made like 8 Pro Bowls, 6 first team All Pros. I'm gonna go with that, and I feel really good about the interior of my defense with Jack Ham in the middle.
No, it's a good pick. Surprised that he lasted this long, honestly. So I have an idea of who I'm going to take as UDFA on the offensive side of the ball if we're doing no Pro Bowls. So I think I'm going to set that aside.
This is the 10th round, right?
This is the 10th round. So I think I'm going to go. I will take. Kind of to give a little bit more love to the 90s team. And I really liked this dude a lot. But I already have enough linebackers, so I'm probably gonna have to pass on him. So I will take. I'll take Heath Miller. I'll get myself a tight end.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, I mean he's great. Have you seen his episode on Ben's podcast where he's just the most mild mannered human being that's ever walked this planet? Like I feel like that's just that's who he is, and tremendous tight end of his time, a little bit underrated. Because again, he's playing during the times of Tony Gonzalez and eventually Gronk and plenty of other Dallas Clark, and there's plenty of other guys that might have had better statistical seasons, but consistently. Again, I think some of these picks for me just come down to consistency, and he was that for a decade. So, fan favorite, really good at what he did. Like Heath Miller a lot. He'll be my tight end.
Absolutely, man. I think of like all those like times where they would get him up the seam, man, and he would be willing to go over the middle, take a big shot, and come down with the ball for the first down. I think the chants have kind of become like iconic. It's cool like that they kind of
in Pittsburgh. It doesn't matter what your name is; they're going to be doing that chant.
But like he was the originator of that. I feel like Heath, and like he's a guy like, I mean, dude, I don't know if I've ever heard has anyone ever had a complaint or said a bad thing about Heath ever?
Man,
like,
if you say a bad word about Heath Miller, I think that says more about you than it does about Heath Miller.
And you talk about like a guy that can catch the ball, but can also like block. I think sets that really that stage pretty easy in terms of like the value that it can have for your offense. So I don't have any issues with you taking him, especially like with your last pick. I mean, that's pretty easy. So
I can't wait to see my UDFA on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to make you laugh, and I'm very excited.
I actually don't know who I'm going to take on the offensive side of the ball, but I know who I'm going to take on defense. My last pick, though, I got to take a quarterback, so I'm going to take Terry Bradshaw.
There you go.
I have long been a believer that Ben's the best quarterback in franchise history, but that doesn't mean I don't think like Bradshaw was really good. I think that you look at some of the numbers and things like that. People will say what they want about the passer rating or whatever else, but Bradshaw was a big game player, man. Like he was really good in several of those Super Bowls. I think the physical skills and the talent that he had, especially with his arm, the ability to push the ball down the field, dude had a freaking rocket launcher.
Yeah.
And he was a guy who was really tough, would scramble, could get additional first downs, won an MVP award, I'm pretty sure, in like 78. So I'm going to take Bradshaw. I feel really good about that. Given the format of the draft, of me being able to get him in the 10th round is probably a little bit of stealing, but yeah, I'll take Bradshaw. I feel pretty good about it, even if I couldn't get my first choice at quarterback.
And bro, not even just like, for me, like my love for Bradshaw, because obviously none of us were alive to see it in color and everything like that. But my love for Terry Bradshaw is every Sunday, noon. You get to hear and it's Terry Bradshaw for an hour, and he's hysterical. I know, the past few years, he's getting up there in years, and he's not as quick-witted as he used to be. But man, growing up. And like Fox NFL Sunday, forever ingrained in me. A lot of like just really, I know that this is a Steelers draft and we, talking about the on-field stuff, but Terry Bradshaw to me, man, the analyst means so much more to me than Terry Bradshaw, the player. Cause like I said, wasn't allowed to see it in person, but so many just like good memories as a kid, watching, with my dad, with my parents, whatever. And waiting for noon to come. You turn that on, pregame stuff. You knew, okay, this is going to be a good day. Terry Bradshaw being a goof. Love Terry Bradshaw so much. Overall, I think we have a good, 10. And so I'll start with so do we want to do, we'll each take our offensive defense right away, or do we want to go defense, offense, offense? What do you want to, how do you want to
we can just keep it back to back. It's whatever you want to do. You can go first, though.
All right. So with my defensive pick, I'm going to take cornerback Ricardo Coakley.
Okay.
And the reason I'm taking him is because the first game that I have a vivid memory of watching, I believe it was week 5, 2004. My mom taped the game against Cleveland. It was Ben's first game against the Browns. It was at home. I could tell you probably every minute detail about that game because we kept the VHS forever. So my dad was at work. So my mom taped it, watched it, and the opening kickoff, Ricardo Coakley returns it to the 47 of Cleveland. And the funniest part about it was Gus Johnson trying to figure out how to say his name. And he's like, Coldplay, and that part of my head just stuck out. So, playing ESPN 2K5 at the time, like he was always my kick returner. Like I just have very sentimental memories about Ricardo Coldplay. So he's on my team as my UDFA defensive player. And my second receiver, who shockingly did not make a Pro Bowl in his career, but I absolutely adored him, and I still do. I'm going to take Plexico Burress. Was a big Plexico Burress guy. That's another guy. Like I was.
Plexico didn't make a Pro Bowl,
right?
At all?
No.
Wow, that's crazy.
I agree.
I would have thought he at least made it. I would have probably said he made a couple.
I would have thought so too.
Wow.
But according to. Let me double check, because I do recall doing a show and being surprised that Plex hadn't made a Pro Bowl. That's why it stuck out of my head.
You definitely could be right. That's
I'm gonna pull up his PFR page. Yep, did not make a Pro Bowl. So, no, I loved him. Like I said, my first vivid year was 2004. So it was Ben's rookie year, and then he leaves the following year, and I was really upset about it. Like that was like my first soul crushing departure, because I love Plexico Burress. Then he comes back 2012 as like a depth receiver. What were his stats that year? Yeah, he had 3 catches, but he had a touchdown, and that made my.
I'm about to say he caught a touchdown against Cleveland, I think, in the last game of the season.
And that was the last touchdown he scored in his career. But yeah, I mean, you look at his numbers, man. Like he had 78 catches in 2002, 60 in 2003. Like reliable enough guy. Was obviously really good with the Giants, helped them win a Super Bowl. But yeah, I love Plex, and I was really happy when he came back. So that will be my offensive UDFA. So Ricardo Coakley and Plexico Burress, my 2 UDFA picks.
Okay. I mean, honestly, like I was going to take this person in the draft regardless. So me being able to get him as a UDFA because of the rules that I set are pretty good. So I'm going to take Ike Taylor. So that's a no-brainer for me. So I'm going to pair him with Mel Blount on the outside. I'm going to feel really good about it. I mean, if you've ever talked to me or like followed me on Twitter for any length of time, y'all know like how underappreciated I felt like Ike was at his prime. Just being able to travel with number 1 wide receivers. Dude couldn't catch the ball unless it was the playoffs. He did have 3 interceptions in the playoffs.
Had one in
several in that 2005 playoff run. But I just think that you look at what that cover 3 scheme really relies on, having a guy that can press, use his length. But Ike was a freak athlete too, like extremely good straight line speed. I think they said, he ran like a 4.2 something 40 coming out. But another guy who we talked about, several players who have kind of made crazy careers for themselves. Like Ike was a 4th round pick. Like I think Mark Madden called him like the worst draft pick of all time, like when he actually got picked in the paper. But just in general, like it is a little sentimental for me too, because I think Ike's always been really cool to me. So he's probably my favorite Steeler of all time. So I'm definitely gonna get him on the squad. Who do I want to take with my last offensive pick, though? That is the question. Because I kind of want – I kind of need a running back because I don't have one because I took 2 receivers. You can take, buddy. I know, but I don't – I'm trying to think because I don't think most of the running backs that are still left are – like Franco made a Pro Bowl. I know Rocky Bleier made a Pro Bowl. Jerome made a Pro Bowl.
There's like 4 names in my head at running back right now that would all be really funny. Well, one that I really liked, like he was actually like a really good like role player for them, but like a few that were like, okay, yeah. Fun like pop quiz answers.
Did Willie Parker make a Pro Bowl? I'm assuming he did.
I feel like he did because he had a year where he ran for 1,300 yards.
Yeah, I feel like he had to make at least one. Yeah, he made 2 actually.
Good for Willie Parker.
Yeah, good.
Damn, I kind of wish I would have taken Willie Parker. I love Willie Parker.
Yeah, that was a kind of a vibes name.
A vibes name.
Oh man.
Hell, the year that they went 8-8 in 06, it was Cowers last year. He had 1,494 yards and 13 touchdowns.
Yeah. Honestly, like if we didn't have the Pro Bowl stipulation in here, I would probably take like Barry Foster. Barry Foster, one of the most random great Steelers seasons of all time. In 92, he had 1,690 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns.
Isn't that
First
still
team
like
All-Pro.
the team record?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. I don't think Le'Veon broke
I'm
it.
pretty sure Le'Veon
So
didn't break it.
yeah. I mean, he was like one of the top MVP choices that year, and then like 2 years later, he was out of the league. I mean, it was just crazy. I don't really
I feel like
know.
I
I'm
can let
assuming
you
there was
take.
probably. Go ahead.
I feel like I can let you take Barry Foster there. I feel like that's a fine little
I don't know. I feel like I'm
asterisk.
cheating.
That's
I
crazy.
feel like I'm cheating. Hold on. Let me
We'll
go
put a
back.
pin in it.
I may take another receivers. I may take another receiver, and we just
Receiver.
might. We may not run the ball at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say you may just not run the ball. That's fine. There's a few
Okay,
like.
I'm taking Santonio. That's what I'm
Okay,
taking.
that's fine. I
Super
love
Bowl
Santonio,
MVP.
man.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, man. Like, we talked really at length earlier about that kind of Ben and AB connection, but dude, Ben and Santonio's connection, like outside the pocket, on some of those scramble plays. I think back to that crazy play that they had against Baltimore was kind of
Dude.
I mean, you saw Ben and AB make that so many times after that fact, but that play, and then obviously the Super Bowl 43 drive was just like incredibly memorable just because that's their last Super Bowl that they won. But the way that Santonio just went off on that final drive, him and Ben just continuously coming up clutch, kind of with their backs up against the wall. I'm good with that being my UDFA.
I grew up a Penn State fan, so like him being an Ohio State guy, I remember I hated him in college.
Yeah.
And then once he became a Steeler, like bro, right away, because even his rookie year, he in the last game of Cowher's coaching career, he scored the game winner against Cincinnati.
I was there.
Were you?
I was there in the end zone that he walked it off in. Honestly, like one of the most fun games that I attended in person. Kind of weird because it's one of the only games I think that the Steelers have played that late in the season that didn't matter at all to them, but it did matter to Cincy.
Yeah,
because I think they had playoff implications, and that ended up hurting them. But yeah, crazy walk off. But funny you say that you grew up a Penn State fan, but I don't really have a college football team, still don't, but I was a huge fan of that Ohio State team. Troy Smith at quarterback, and then they had Ted Ginn and Santonio. Like, I remember playing the NCAA game.
Was also on that team, and he was pretty good.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, I used to play that game on my my PSP, my PlayStation Portable, and I would be in the car like going to like games and whatever else, and I'd be back there playing with those guys because Troy was really fun. He could move outside the pocket, but their receivers were deadly. So yeah, that was fun. But I'm definitely I'm content with my squad for sure.
Oh, for sure, man. Yeah, like I said, a lot of this is sentimental. Like, especially with Santonio. Like, I remember both Super Bowls that they won. Because I was in first grade for the one and then fourth grade for the other. My dad watched it in a different room because he was just like so stressed out. It was funny. I remember Santonio making the catch and just like, okay, just breath of fresh air. So, dude, yeah, very fun to do this. You've done a lot of really good stuff on your channel recently, so yeah, tell everybody about it.
Yeah, you can find all my stuff Twitter and on YouTube at Steelers_DB. There's some film room stuff, a little bit of everything over there. I've done some interviews with some Steelers guys recently, just trying to keep the content flowing. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, you check it out. But I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Oh, dude, I always love doing stuff with you. In terms of me, I started doing the top 10 stuff again. So I did top 10 worst head coaches of the 2000s. So 2000, 2009, that was fun to make. So go and watch it. Written stuff over at USA Today. I did tiers for all 32 NFL teams. So that's the most recent thing, but also top 32 receivers, ranking every head coach from worst to first. And then obviously the Steelers written coverage over at Behind the Steel Curtain. Go and check all of that out. And then, of course, subscribe to the channel for all the NFL content, all the Steelers content that you could ever want and that your little hearts could all desire. DB, I always enjoy doing stuff with you, buddy. We'll we're definitely going to connect, during camp and whatnot. And yeah, dude, cannot wait for this year and to be able to do more stuff with you.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it.
All right, y'all. Take care. See you back here tomorrow on the channel for more Black and Gold Breakdown. Enjoy your day. We'll talk soon.